Good afternoon, fourth grade. Today we're going to continue reading in our text, Ra God of Radiance. And before we get started, we have a quick write. It says, what does the story of Ra remind you of and why? And so one thing that the story of Ra reminds me of is the creation story. Yesterday we learned about how the ancient Egyptians thought that the world was created, and growing up, I went to church and my parents told me about a different creation story, and so that's what it reminds me of. But you can go ahead and write down an answer for what the story of Ra reminds you of. Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready for the focus question. It says, how does Egyptian mythology explain how humans were created? Our focus standard for today is we want to be able to describe the setting and the characters of the creation myth in detail using evidence from the story to support your description. Our vocabulary words for today are awe-inspiring. And that is something that is like so beautiful, or it's like really impressive, kind of leaves you speechless. And so this sunset of the Eiffel Tower is awe-inspiring. It's very beautiful. The next word is consume. And this can be used in terms of your emotion. So if you are consumed, you are overcome with a certain kind of emotion. So this monkey is consumed with anger. You can tell all through his body and in his face that he's very angry. He's consumed. And then the last word is smolder. And that has multiple meanings. If you're thinking about a fire that's smoldering, it means the fire is about to go out. It's smoking. There aren't any flames. It's kind of smoky. Someone can give another person a smoldering look, and that is kind of like a mean look. All right, go ahead and turn the page, and we're going to be reading on pages 5 through 6 today. And we have some new characters and a new setting, and we're going to be thinking about 2 problems and 2 solutions. So we're on the text. On the page that right after the one where Ra, Shu, and Tefnut are all together in their triad. We're after that page, and we're at one night. And we're going to be using our CSPS strategy. All right, it says, one night, instead of sleeping, Shu and Tefnut went off wandering in the dark. Shu was air, and Tefnut was moisture, and neither of them had special powers to let them see through the blackness. So, as children will, they got lost. We'll stop right there because we had information about our characters and our setting. Our text tells us that Shu and Tefnut went off wandering in the dark, and they got lost. So we would underline this first sentence and this last sentence and put a C out beside it. In box 1A, we would write, Shu and Tefnut wandered around in the darkness and got lost. Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready for the setting. And the quote we would write down in the second part of 1B is this first quote that says, one night, instead of sleeping, Shu and Tefnut went wandering in the dark. And you can add this last part that says, they got lost. Press pause to write down the quote and play when you're ready for the setting. All right, and it tells us in the same paragraph that they were wandering around in the dark at night. So in box 2A, we would write, Shu and Tefnut were wandering around in the darkness away from home. Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready for the quote. And for the quote, we would write down this same sentence, this same first sentence. One night, instead of sleeping, Shu and Tefnut went wandering in the dark. Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready to keep reading. We're going to keep reading and we're going to listen for the first problem. When Ra realized that they were absent, he felt bereft. The difference between being alone in the vastness and being with his two children was the difference between sorrow and delight. He was lonely, and worse, he grew anxious. There could be nothing out there to hurt the children, for after all, there could be nothing out there, period. What existed only because he had made it. Yet anxiety made this God itch all over until he wanted to scream and scratch off his own skin. He needed those children. He loved them. And at this time, Ra had only one eye. He plucked it out from his forehead and sent his eyes searching for Shu and Tefnut, for his darlings. All right, we'll stop right there because we have information about the problem. We know that Ra is lonely and anxious without his children. In the text it says he was lonely, and worse, he grew anxious. Underline that and put a P out beside it. And then for box 3A, we will write, Ra became lonely and anxious without his children. Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready for the solution. And if we read the next paragraph, it tells us that he plucked out his eye and sent his eye searching for Shu and Tefnut. Underline this sentence and write an S out beside it. You can write S number 1, and for the problem, you can write P number 1, because there's going to be another one. And in box 3B, we would write, Ra sent his only eye to look for Shu and Tefnut. Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready to keep reading. All right, now we're looking for another problem. We're at the bottom of the page. Then he settled down and waited for the eye to return. He waited and waited. While he waited, blind and cold, he curled in on himself and wondered what he would do, turn the page, if his eye didn't find his children. It might search in vain forever, but the children could come back on their own anyways. That was possible. But that was terrible too, for their father wouldn't even be able to see them. Ra rolled in wretchedness, and so Ra fashioned for himself a new eye as he waited and waited some more. So we'll stop right there because we have Ra's second problem. Ra's worried his children won't return. And if they do return, he's worried he won't be able to see them. And so in box, we would underline this sentence that says, go back to the previous page, that says, while he waited blind and cold, he curled in on himself and wondered what he would do if his eye didn't find his children. And out beside that quote, write P number 2. And then in box 4A, we're going to write down for our second problem, Ra got worried that his eye would not return with his children. Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready for the solution. All right, and so it tells us in the middle paragraph that Ra fashioned for himself a new eye, and he waited and waited. Make sure you have that sentence underlined with solution number 2 out beside it. And in box 4B, we're going to write down, Ra made a new eye and waited until his old eye found his children and brought them home. Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready for the paragraph. All right, and let's go ahead and read this last paragraph. It says, meanwhile, the first Ra of I, the original I, lit up the world and flew across the firmament. It hugged the sands, it seeped into the rock crevices, and now it soared across the waters, rising with each wave, falling as it crested. The old I checked everywhere, and at last found the cowering cubs that had grown all gangly and awkward, almost full size by now, and led them back to their father, dripping and skinny and needy. And so the old I was able to find Shu and Tefnut and bring them back to Ra. All right, for our paragraph, it says, describe Ra's relationship with his children. And so you need to think about what was Ra's problem and how did he solve it? And how do you think, what does this tell you about their relationship?